Today we are going to be taking a trip around the globe to take a look at some spots that'll make your EMF reader set off like crazy. Grab the crucifix, set a salt circle out, because today we are going to be taking a look at the top 5 terrifying places that are home to demonic entities. Hey, you let me know down below which of these places you would just love to go ghost hunting yourself someday, and which of these places you couldn't get paid to go. Now let's dive on in, why don't we? Number 5, the Arrowdale Asylum. Arrowdale Asylum in Victoria, Australia is the largest abandoned asylum in Australia, a dubious distinction, besides the honor that it might be the most haunted building in Australia as well. The asylum first opened its doors in 1865, and on first opening used to bear a much more wild name, being the Arrowdale Lunatic Asylum. And its 130 years of active service, over 13,000 people are said to have breathed their last inside the asylum. So is it a wonder the place is thought to be haunted? Arrowdale was hardly a place built to help the sick. It was commissioned to help empty jails out and accommodate the increasing number of insane people in Victoria who were being locked up. Now, the conditions for what made someone legally insane back then were generous, to say the least. These would include people with Down syndrome, epilepsy, autism, even women suffering from postpartum depression. Oh, the lunatics. The asylum was structured more like a prison than it was a hospital. The walls were designed to give off the illusion of freedom, designed cruelly to be sloped, which meant from the inside they were too tall to climb over, and you could tell that, but from the outside they looked low and didn't suggest imprisonment, meaning it looked welcoming and inviting while you were coming on in, but then once you were locked in you realized you were trapped. Unsurprisingly, the place did not treat its patients particularly well. Lobotomies were common practice, oftentimes without anesthetic. So these days, even though the place has been abandoned and doesn't see patients anymore, it's quite the popular spot for ghost hunting. There are complaints of feeling cold drafts running through the old offices. Scary banging can be heard on the walls. Now Arrowdale is closed, but they do offer tours, and one tour guide spoke out saying, "I was the biggest skeptic of the paranormal imaginable when I started. I've changed my mind completely. I've seen things here, heard things in here, felt things in here that I can't explain." There was a paranormal group that came through, and when they tried one of the restraining jackets on, one of them started screaming, "Get it off me! Get it off me! Get it off me!" And when they took the jacket off of him, there was a bite mark on his neck. That's one of the things I can't explain, and I can't either. And hey, if you're looking for a vacation to a haunted spot, you don't even have to leave your room. You can stay right where you are, because you can subscribe to Top 5 Scary. We have got more haunted sites than you could ever visit in a lifetime, all just a click away. So click on through, hit the bell, stay subscribed, and don't miss a single thing. But do that once the credits roll in this video, okay? We got way more haunted stuff coming for you. Number 4, Leap Castle. For 700 years, Leap Castle has proudly stood in Ireland, boasting a infamous reputation as the most haunted castle in the world. I'm sure Dracula is deeply offended by that statement, but he's mostly fictional, so really, what can you do? This castle was first built in the 13th century, home to the O'Bannon clan, but it would be adopted by the O'Carroll clan, who seized control of it by the 15th century, and they did not seize control nicely. From here, ownership would pass from father to son, but was frequently punctuated by plots, assassinations, rival clan wars, and even O'Carroll family members assassinating each other were all par for the course for Leap Castle's history. Think like Succession, but 10 times worse. A grim oubliette where prisoners would be pushed from a window, landing into a pit of spikes, completed the castle. After centuries of battles and brawls over the castle, it was burned in 1922 during the Irish Civil War, where it was then abandoned. Now it goes without saying that a castle that saw this much death is a home to a bevy of trapped spirits, the most present one being the chapel spirit. Legend has it that one of the O'Carrolls had his own brother assassinated to gain power. His brother, a member of the clergy, is said to restlessly wander the burnt out chapel. Visitors report seeing beams of light, the smell of burnt rubber, and the shadow of a priest in the stairwell. There's also stories of a young girl named Emily who fell from the rampart in the 16th century and tragically lost her life. There's stories of seeing the young girl walking atop the battlements, dragging a misshapen leg as she walks. Today, you can visit Leap Castle if you're feeling daring enough to contact the owner Sean Ryan, who does offer private tours. It'll be you, him, and all the spirits you can handle. Number 3, the Capuchin Catacombs, Palermo, Italy. Our next entry is going to take us to Sicily, a beautiful city, famous for its cathedrals, its beaches, incredible cuisine, and one of the scariest places on earth with the Capuchin Catacombs. Hey, just a heads up, by the way, I know these are all pretty freaky, but this one's actually pretty freaky to look at, so don't say I didn't warn you none. From the outside, the Capuchin Monastery looks like any other big old church building, but on the inside, you can descend descend into the catacombs and wander through the hallowed halls where the walls are decked and the benches are posed, and tucked into open coffins are the bodies of roughly 8,000 people. Now, as you can see, they have a slightly different idea of respect for their dead. We, tend to bury them. Here, they nail them to the walls. The corpses are dressed to their best, since, gotta look good. You don't know who could see. These dark catacombs are separated into a few different sections, each corresponding to the type of people that they were in life. Religious figures go in one room, doctors and professionals in another. There's a room for women. There's a room for infants. The corpses go back a while. It's like a whole museum of bodies in there, with the longest staying guest being that of a friar from the 16th century. Imagine the smell. The unique, dry atmosphere of the catacombs allow for the mummification process to work just wonders, with some of the corpses being referred to as sleeping beauties, which, I don't know, too dark, even for me. The process of the mummification is pretty horrifying, so obviously I'm going to tell you. Priests would lay the bodies on shelves, and I just ate, I'm sorry. They would let the body drip until they were completely drained of all fluids. A year later, they would be rinsed with vinegar. Oh my god, I don't know why vinegar was grosser. They'd be dressed in their best clothing and kept for all eternity. Now, the catacombs are a popular tourist destination now, if not an unusual one. Definitely, I think, any personal bias aside, you can agree it's an interesting place to go. I'm probably good, though. I feel like I can smell that room from here, and I am not interested in getting any closer. Number 2, the Sedlec Ossuary, Czech Republic. Well, our last entry was about a church building decorated with the remains of the dead, so I thought maybe I'd mix it up just a little bit with our next entry and do another church building decorated with body parts. Welcome to the Sedlec Ossuary in the Czech Republic, and hey, how often do you get to use ossuary in a sentence? Today is a great day for me. Most people know the ossuary by its colloquial nickname, the Bone Church, and it's hard to disagree with that, even if that does sound like it's an area from one of the Dark Souls games. This place looks like it was interior designed by Leatherface with an infinite budget. The centerpiece and magnum opus of the church is a haunting bone chandelier composed of almost every bone in the human body. Now, that would be more than enough to be one of the scariest places on earth, but that is literally just the beginning. Let's run through it. You've got 2 bone chalices, 4 bone candelabras, 6 bone pyramids, a bone family crest, skull candle holders, and a skeleton partridge in a bone pear tree. There's bones wrapped and decorating all across the church like the world's worst Christmas decorations. They got bone streamers pretty much, like a scary birthday party. So how did this happen? Did they just let a local lunatic decorate the place? Well, way back when the ossuary was the abbot of the Sedlec Monastery, this holy soil was a very appealing gravesite for people and religious figures, and just about everybody wanted to get their bones buried here. The problem therein is that when way too many people all want to be stored and buried in the same place, eventually things start to pile up and you got nowhere to put the bones. So, in the 18th century, a woodcarver was tasked with finding a solution to this grim problem, and he came up with the wonderfully terrifying idea of turning them into art. God bless our creative fellows. He bleached all of the bones to make sure they looked gorgeous and uniform, and in the scariest of ways, I kind of agree. It's beautiful in a horrifying sense. Number 1, Centralia, Pennsylvania. I think the best horror movies and properties are based on real things. I think the Overlook Hotel from The Shining is based on the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, Conjuring and Annabelle based on Ed and Lorraine Warren, obviously, Leatherface based on Ed Gein, and the town of Silent Hill from the Silent Hill movies was based on Centralia, Pennsylvania, where an infamous coal mine fire abandoned the town, leaving only fog and a rain of ash over the deserted streets. In 1962, a fire started in a landfill and spread to the coal tunnels that lay deep beneath, thousands of feet below the surface of the town. Rescue crews tried their level best to put out the raging flame, but despite their best efforts, the flame caught a coal seam where it now started raging burning, where it's still doing that to this day. The town was abandoned under government orders, and a never-ending rain of ash gave off the impression of a horrifying abandoned resort town now made famous by Silent Hill. Now, it's worth noting, and I'm only including this because I'm like a Silent Hill lunatic fan, this is just the depiction in the films. The original video game series Silent Hill is just a scary town. It's not based on this one. The thing it actually takes the most inspiration from, and I swear this is real, is Kindergarten Cop. Please look this up after this video. The school in Silent Hill is the school from Kindergarten Cop. Anyway, Centralia now is effectively erased. coast, the Pennsylvania government removed its zip codes, encouraged everybody to get the heck out of Dodge, and took all the official government property and all the names off the signs and stuff off. But few residents could not be deterred and still remain in the ghost town, with some reports saying that 6 people are still living there, clinging to the life that they had stolen from them by disaster and left forgotten by their own government. Even Hollywood actually no longer films movies there. The last couple of productions that tried said that the graffiti and desolation of the town has made it look too realistic as a ghost town to be used to film in. So if you ever happen to be passing through Centralia, just be nice, okay? They have been through a lot.
In 5th place, we have Preston Castle, also known as the Preston School of Industry in Ione. Opening in 1894 and named after state senator at the time, Edward Myers Prestonas, it was presented as an alternative to juvie, a place to send troubled boys to learn a new trade and avoid incarceration. To the general public, it quickly became known as the best reform school of its kind, where boys could grow their own food, raise livestock, learn farming trades and skills for self-preservation in the real world. Known as wards, minors under guardianship of the state, but not necessarily juvenile offenders, many boys passed from severe illnesses like tuberculosis or were simply killed by guards for reasons unknown. Records show that the initiation to the facility involved swimming through a pool filled with lye, and common discipline methods included starvation, isolation, public paddling, and lashings. A mass grave on the property contains at least 23 bodies of wards that were sent to be rehabilitated. Head housekeeper of the facility, Anna Corbin, was brutally beaten to death on February 23rd of 1950. Various students and members of the staff were suspects in her passing, but it remains unsolved. Visitors to the now landmark have reported meeting her spirit, which roams around the grounds with all the students that couldn't pass over. Physical representations of spirits at this location have included multiple slamming doors, falling objects, disembodied voices, and the feeling of being touched by a cold hand. All common pranks that are meant to terrorize and discombobulate. In 4th place, we have the Los Coches Adobe in Soledad. Before the establishment even broke ground, back when the area was used primarily for mining, over 30 miners perished in a soil collapse, and visitors to the area have since reported hearing their cries for help from the now abandoned mine shaft, while feeling pressure on their chest and back as if they were being buried alive. The adobe itself is located on the site of Highway 101. The building being originally built in 1843 to be used as lodging for workers in the area. Between 1872 and 1886, Soledad served as the terminal station for the railway that connected to San Francisco. Legend says that the owner of the inn was responsible for ending the lives of multiple folks who stayed there, especially near the end of the inn being in use, by entering the rooms as they slept and slitting their throats before stealing their riches in an attempt to keep the inn, well, afloat. Other spirits spotted on the property include, but are not limited to, a man hanging from a tree, swaying in the wind, and a woman sitting while holding a pointer stick, with her mouth moving as if she's yelling at whoever spots her. It is reported that the wall between the living and the dead is so thin here that people who have stayed in recent history reported having the walls and surroundings inside of the building changed them to match the settings of the once deadly inn before their very eyes. Those who have opted to go so far as to stay the night have often woken up with handprints on their chest or throat, a remnant of what came before.
Number 3. Hoabashu Forest. Our next entry is going to take us to Transylvania, to Romania, the Hoabashu Forest, and please do forgive me, my Romanian ain't quite what it used to be and it was never much to begin with. The forest is beautiful, if not more than a little haunted, with countless reports of all kinds of paranormal activity stemming from within the hectares of the creepy, bountiful woods. The place kind of looks like it's the set to a Halloween movie as is, with the twisted trees curling ever outwards. Now, there are many legends and stories coming out of the forest. It's even been called the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. According to one particularly exciting legend, a girl went wandering in the forest one day to escape the difficulties of life and take her mind off her troubles. She found herself lost in the forest and nature, but she never returned. Her family looked and looked for her, but to no avail. They never found her and assumed that their daughter had passed until she reappeared and walked home 5 years later, unsure where she'd been and didn't remember anything of the experience and hadn't aged a day on her. That is far from the only strange thing that's happened here. Take a listen to this folktale. A shepherd and his flock of over 200 sheep were said to have vanished without a single trace. You'd think there'd be one footprint out of 200 sheep. Another story tells of a woman who went wandering through the forest and came back and discovered she had a 15th century coin placed in her pocket, as if a ghost left her a little surprise to take home. In the 1960s, biologist Alexander Sift photographed a strange object that he saw above the sky of the Hoabashu forest, which would gain notoriety as a UFO sighting. I'm gonna stop and ask here, basically what wasn't happening here that was supernatural? Is there anything normal natural about this forest, or is it just all haunted all the way down? If we've had any Romanian viewers, you may let us know about this one. Yeah. Number 2. Castle of Good Hope. Coming up next on our list of haunted hotspots is the Castle of Good Hope in Cape Town, South Africa. It was first built in the 17th century by the Dutch East India Company, so bad vibes there to begin with. It's the oldest colonial building in South Africa, and if you believe the local legends, is allegedly one of the more paranormal spots in the entire country. Now, the first ghost sighting came from 1915, when a tall, pale, mysterious man dressed in black, much like yours truly, was spotted walking seemingly out of nowhere alongside one of the castle's ramparts before vanishing as soon as he appeared. Huh, well that's pretty weird and seemed like an isolated incident until in 1947 this same strange man just couldn't stop appearing, making regular visits and check-ins for the castle weeks on end. He would be seen jumping off the castle's wall, seemingly plummeting to his doom, only to reappear again, to do it all again. Maybe he's just having fun. I imagine being a ghost is dreadfully boring. He kinda sounds like a sick ghost, all things considered. Sounds like he just wants to bungee jump, hang 10, vibe out. I can get down with this ghost. Another popular ghost story from the castle is that of their former governor, one Peter Gijsbert van Noot. You try saying that 5 times fast, I barely made it through that once. He passed in the castle in the 23rd of April, 1728, the same day he had sentenced 7 army deserters to the death sentence. Now the story goes that one of these soldiers hexed him and demanded he face and watch the execution. Van Noot was apparently more than a little bit squeamish at this prospect and refused the invitation. And if you believe the stories, later that day was found dead at his desk, slumped over. And some believe his ghost still wanders the castle's halls. And he's far from the only spirit reported to inhabit the castle. There's also reports of hearing a man and a woman arguing outside of a guard station, and as well a lady of the manor who visits esteemed privileged ghosts. Imagine that, getting haunted by the 1%. Number 1, the Hellfire Club. Now, don't get your hopes up too much. The party won't be meeting for a D&D session with Eddie Munson anytime soon at this Hellfire Club, although the name might come from it. I'm not sure, to be honest. If the Duffer Brothers want to clear that up for me, let me know. My DMs are open. The Hellfire Club in Dublin, otherwise known as the Montpelier Hill, was once home to a hunting lodge in the 17th century owned by one Richard Parsons, a man obsessed with black magic and the occult. It's said that the Hellfire Club was a club for Satanists, and the leader was referred to as the King of Hell and would dress like the devil during meetings. Honestly, sounds like kind of a fun club. All meetings they left a seat open just in case Lucifer wanted to drop by for a few hands of poker, clink some glasses with them. Stories go on to say that members of the Hellfire Club participated in all manner of dark and sinister ritual, sacrificing cats, goats, and if legends are to be believed, even the servants of the Hellfire Club were offered some membership package. Now, there's a very famous story out of the club that says one fateful day, a strange man appeared and asked if he could join in at the card game for the night. As there was always an open seat, they offered it to him. And during the game, a player dropped his cards, and when he went underneath the table to retrieve them, saw that the strange man had hooves in place of his feet. And upon rising from the table, the stranger had vanished. Probably for the best. I cannot imagine that a game of cards against the devil would be beneficiary for anyone except maybe Satan. I would not call his bluff. I would just fold every hand. The building was scorched and set ablaze in 1750, with many differing accounts as to what caused the flame. Some say it was the club itself that set the building on fire to give it a more intimidating appearance and keep out outsiders. Some say the devil did it as retribution for a ritual, and some say it was just a duel or a brawl that ended badly and got a bit rowdy. Whatever the case, the Hellfire Club relocated their activities sometime around 1760 and abandoned their original building, where it still stands today. You can visit it today, and it's a pretty popular tourist destination for urban explorers and paranormal investigators who want to see if perhaps there's any residual black magic in the soil and walls there. Fort. Now, if you Google Bangor Fort, if you're planning a trip up there anytime soon, almost every result will give you back something like India's most notorious or India's most haunted, so maybe that should give you a bit of a sense as to what's going on here. It's bad news. In fact, the place is said to be so filled to bursting with malevolent spirits that the Indian government actually restricts tourists from visiting after sunset for fear of spiritual danger. Let's take a look at the history of the Bangor Fort, one of the most notorious haunted places in India if the search engine is anything to go by. The fort was first built in the 17th century, and according to local legends, a religious ascetic lived nearby to the fort and insisted that any house built near the fort shouldn't be taller than his own house. Not sure why, but he just didn't want to be upstaged, I guess. If the shadow of any house fell on his own, he would destroy the fort, he threatened. When columns were added to the fort that casted a shadow, the fort was destroyed and abandoned seemingly overnight. Now, a variant of this legend suggests that a priest who practiced black magic and was a practitioner of the occult was in love with a princess who lived in the fort. He offered her a love elixir, and when she refused his proposal, he cursed the entire village, condemning it to be damned by the spirits for eternity. Locals claim that walking by the Bangor Fort, you can hear women screaming and crying from within at night, and strange otherworldly music can be heard playing seemingly from nowhere. Other residents claim that they see shadowy wisps or ethereal lights coming out of the fort's structure, alongside strange smells? What does a ghost smell like, I wonder? You know what? Don't let me know. That's maybe one that's better left not knowing. The reason for the ban after sunset is because local legends say that any person who enters the fort during the night will never be seen again and will become one of the spirits trapped inside. So maybe just stay within the guidelines and follow the signs just this once. And if you're looking for more videos about haunted hotspots, alien sightings, cryptids, creepy crawlies, and basically just about anything scary under the sun and above it, well, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. So click on through, subscribe, stay scared, and don't miss a single scream. But do that after you finish watching this video, okay? We worked hardish on it. Number 4, Tunnel 33. Shimla is said to be one of the most beautiful cities in the entire country of India and happens to also be home to some of the more haunted hotspots. Now, this one in particular might not be as scary as some of the other ones in this list. I thought maybe I'd give you a little break before we really got into it. But this ghost has been described as a lot friendlier than your average spirit, more of a Casper, if you will. Tunnel 33 is the longest tunnel in the Kalka-Shimla railway track, built in the late 18th century in 1898. British railway engineer Colonel Balrog was the man in charge of constructing the project. Colonel Balrog, I'm pretty sure he was a Street Fighter character. Colonel Balrog was given a thin deadline and he failed to meet expectations for the tunnel, leading to him being humiliated in his career after the British government was understandably pretty upset with him. Distraught, completely despondent, he ended up taking his own life and was buried near the incomplete tunnel on the railroad tracks, where his spirit has remained ever since. Residents report seeing apparitions of the good colonel through the tunnel, sometimes saying they see him standing, admiring his work, riding his horse, or if you really believe some of the more out there stories, he's even been seen talking to tourists and locals as they pass through, asking questions about his tunnel and if the project is going well and if they're meeting deadlines. The poor guy is still so focused on his work all these years later. Take a break, man, for us, please. A phantasmal 15. You've earned it. There's something very sad about a ghost who's stuck on the land he worked on, unable to move on. He's not interested in haunting or scaring anyone, but just doomed to check in on a project he never got to see completed. If you ever visit the accursed tunnel, and if you happen to see the colonel, tell him thank you, won't you? For me, okay? Tell him that the tunnel looks great and he did a good job. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Number 3, Ramoji Film City. Ramoji Film City is one of the biggest film sets in the country. In fact, it's actually one of the largest film complexes in the entire world. I mean, it's a film city. How many other film cities are there really? It's a big attraction for movie lovers who come the world over to see its extravagant displays and exhibits, but also entices paranormal hunters looking for proof of the other world. And there's a little something for everyone here, you know? It's a real family place. So where does the haunting come from? Did the ghosts just love the silver screen? Well, Ramoji Film City was allegedly built on an old Nizam battleground. The Nizam of Hyderabad was the ruling caste of the area in the 18th century. Now, if these stories are true and it is built on an old battlefield, then it makes sense that there would be a good amount of lingering evil and restless spirits trapped in the soil that haven't moved on. Dying violently tends to make ghosts. Guests of the film city claim that while visiting, lights will flicker and turn on and off at random. Now, that could be bad wiring, but it also could be troublesome spirits. Where things get kind of spooky is the reports of crew members on film sets getting injured under mysterious circumstances, equipment malfunctioning, or outright being destroyed in front of people's very eyes. And these are some of the more common reports of things happening on the cursed set. Women in particular have felt targeted by the ghosts or spirits in the Ramoji Film City. Actresses have claimed that they felt like they were being watched in their green rooms or even feeling a supernatural tugging at their clothes during filming. Now, I'm sure they make all kinds of genres of movie at the Ramoji Film City, but if you want my professional advice, I think they should definitely consider filming a horror movie there. It sounds like they would save a ton on the special effects budget, or maybe they could make a documentary. Do you need to pay a ghost if you're gonna have a ghost in a movie? Do ghosts still have the same workers' rights? Somebody look into that for me. Number 2, Paveglia. I've talked about Paveglia on this channel before, and I almost kind of can't resist bringing it up again because I just find it so fascinating. Describing Paveglia sounds like Italy was intentionally trying to make the setting to a horror movie. It's just off the coast of Venice. Initially, the island served as a quarantine zone for those suffering from the plague. Infected were shipped off to Paveglia to wait out their final days. The trouble was, a lot of the people who would end up getting sent to Paveglia weren't even sick at all, showing minor to no symptoms at all. However, that probably changed pretty quickly once they were sent to a quarantine zone of exclusively sick people. It's said that the ground on Paveglia is so hallowed that there's more ash from human remains than there is soil on the island. Eventually, in 1922, Paveglia underwent a bit of a rebranding, since centuries of being known as the quarantine zone was hurting its image and its tourist economy, and it rebranded as an island home to a mental hospital. Now, of course, this mental hospital was home to doctors who performed sick experiments on their patients, often with little to no care for the patient's well-being. Chisels, drills, lobotomies without any form of anesthetic or proper treatment, all these fun things. It's said that the lead doctor at the facility was eventually so overcome with guilt over what he had done and haunted by the screams and spirits of his patients and victims that he would eventually throw himself off of the tower on the center of the island. Now, to deter all you would-be ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts out there who think Paveglia is sounding like the holy grail of haunted spots, I should warn you that you are probably not going to get in there, as it is extremely forbidden to enter, as in it's illegal. It's punishable to the fullest extent of the law and is considered a criminal act to trespass onto Paveglia. But a better question is, why would you even want to? Some spirits are better left unbothered. At the number 1 spot is Pripyat, the town outside of Chernobyl, the famed nuclear reactor. 50,000 people used to live here, and now it's a ghost town. Sorry, couldn't resist. It's difficult to summarize just exactly what happened in Chernobyl in under a 2-minute time frame, but you know, we can gloss over some of the big details for you. An overload at a nearby reactor caused a nuclear meltdown that ended up causing one of the worst ecological disasters in human history. A massive chain of unfortunate events had to all happen for the incident to play out the way it did, and unfortunately that's exactly how it went. It's a fascinating case, and there are tons and tons of documents and things to read about it, and you should after this video because it's fascinating. 50,000 people had to be evacuated basically overnight, and Pripyat turned into a ghost town, now standing as a harrowing monument to the dangers of unchecked nuclear power. Photos from inside Pripyat almost don't look real. They look like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie, and I guess that kind of makes sense because it is post-apocalyptic when you think about it. Unlike a lot of the others on this list, Pripyat doesn't need any supernatural ghost stories to elicit a sense of fear. It's haunted, definitely, but more so by radiation and unease than anything else. Mutated animals and vegetation, abandoned Ferris wheels, and an unmissable sense of dread in the air certainly paint a picture of one of the Earth's darkest spots. To some, Pripyat is the ultimate dark tourist destination, infamous and wholly unique. There's actually a whole subculture around venturing into the zone for recreation, a group of people who call themselves stalkers after the 1972 film and not the first-person shooter RPG series set in Chernobyl. These people illegally trespass into the surrounding areas of Chernobyl for the ultimate urban exploration thrill. Now there are guided tours as well of Chernobyl's surrounding areas for those who are less familiar with the dangers of the zone, but want to get up and close and personal nonetheless. 5. The Arrowdale Asylum. Arrowdale Asylum in Victoria, Australia is the largest abandoned asylum in Australia, a dubious distinction, besides the honor that it might be the most haunted building in Australia as well. The asylum first opened its doors in 1865 and on first opening used to bear a much more wild name, being the Arrowdale Lunatic Asylum. And its 130 years of active service, over 13,000 people are said to have breathed their last inside the asylum. So is it a wonder the place is thought to be haunted? Arrowdale was hardly a place built to help the sick. It was commissioned to help empty jails out and accommodate the increasing number of insane people in Victoria who were being locked up. Now, the conditions for what made someone legally insane back then were generous, to say the least. These would include people with Down syndrome, epilepsy, autism, even women suffering from postpartum depression. Oh, the lunatics. The asylum was structured more like a prison than it was a hospital. The walls were designed to give off the illusion of freedom, designed cruelly to be sloped, which meant from the inside they were too tall to climb over, and you could tell that. But from the outside they looked low and didn't suggest imprisonment, meaning it looked welcoming and inviting while you were coming on in, but then once you were locked in you realized you were trapped. Unsurprisingly, the place did not treat its patients particularly well. Lobotomies were common practice, oftentimes without anesthetic. So these days, even though the place has been abandoned and doesn't see patients anymore, it's quite the popular spot for ghost hunting. There are complaints of feeling cold drafts running through the old offices. Scary banging can be heard on the walls. Now Arrowdale is closed, but they do offer tours, and one tour guide spoke out saying, "I was the biggest skeptic of the paranormal imaginable when I started. I've changed my mind completely. I've seen things here, heard things in here, felt things in here that I can't explain." There was a paranormal group that came through, and when they tried one of the restraining jackets on, one of them started screaming, "Get it off me! Get it off me! Get it off me!" And when they took the jacket off of him, there was a bite mark on his neck. That's one of the things I can't explain, and I can't either. And hey, if you're looking for a vacation to a haunted spot, you don't even have to leave your room. You can stay right where you are because you can subscribe to Top 5 Scary. We have got more haunted sites than you could ever visit in a lifetime, all just a click away. So click on through, hit the bell, stay subscribed, and don't miss a single thing. But do that once the credits roll in this video, okay? We got way more haunted stuff coming for you. Number 4, Leap Castle. For 700 years, Leap Castle has proudly stood in Ireland, boasting a infamous reputation as the most haunted castle in the world. I'm sure Dracula is deeply offended by that statement, but he's mostly fictional, so really, what can you do? This castle was first built in the 13th century, home to the O'Bannon clan, but it would be adopted by the O'Carroll clan, who seized control of it by the 15th century, and they did not seize control nicely. From here, ownership would pass from father to son, but was frequently punctuated by plots, assassinations, rival clan wars, and even O'Carroll family members assassinating each other were all par for the course for Leap Castle's history. Think like Succession, but 10 times worse. A grim oubliette where prisoners would be pushed from a window, landing into a pit of spikes, completed the castle. After centuries of battles and brawls over the castle, it was burned in 1922 during the Irish Civil War, where it was then abandoned. Now it goes without saying that a castle that saw this much death is a home to a bevy of trapped spirits, the most present one being the chapel spirit. Legend has it that one of the O'Carrolls had his own brother assassinated to gain power. His brother, a member of the clergy, is said to restlessly wander the burnt out chapel. Visitors report seeing beams of light, the smell of burnt rubber, and the shadow of a priest in the stairwell. There's also stories of a young girl named Emily who fell from the rampart in the 16th century and tragically lost her life. There's stories of seeing the young girl walking atop the battlements, dragging a misshapen leg as she walks. Today, you can visit Leap Castle if you're feeling daring enough to contact the owner Sean Ryan, who does offer private tours. It'll be you, him and all the spirits you can handle. Number 2, Dead Fengmin Village. Coming up next on this list is going to be Fengmin Village. Fengmin Village is sometimes known as Dead Fengmin's Village, which is not exactly the most welcoming name you want to hear, but there's a pretty good reason for it though. The village itself is about as dead as a village can be, long abandoned by an unknown tribe. It's located in the valley of a nameless mountain in northern China's Henan province. An abandoned city left in a nameless mountain. It seems like it's the start of a chosen one, like heroic journey out there, start of a quest. The surrounding landscape is supposedly quite beautiful. A flowing brook, a lush forestry and trees, and buildings from the Qing dynasty. 39 buildings, 200 rooms, all of them left completely vacant. And the weird part? No one even knows why. There is extremely little information to be found on Fengmin Village. Who lived there, what happened to them, and so on, making it absolutely rife for urban legends of hauntings and ghosts. It's a fairly popular spot for backpackers and hikers with an interest in the supernatural who are looking to discover something in the lost village. One story tells of a hiker named Maitreya who would make expeditions out to Fengmin Village, camping alongside the river just outside with a few companions. On one of his treks, he got the bright idea in the middle of the night to prank his companions by jumping and scaring them, which, let me just say, I absolutely have to respect that. You're camping out in an abandoned ghost village, you have to seize the opportunity to prank your friends just a little bit. Well, before he got a chance, he got served up his own scare because he swears a discordant, sad-sounding voice kept calling his name out over and over in a voice he said he couldn't recognize or had never heard before. And none of his friends had any idea what he was talking about. At number 1, Chaonai 81. Our next entry is Chaonai number 81, a building that has a fairly notable reputation, being listed as the most haunted building in Beijing. It's Beijing's most famous haunted house. The ghost most commonly reported in this house is that of a woman who was the wife of an officer in the National Revolutionary Army during the Chinese Civil War in the late 1940s. He had fled to Taiwan with his compatriots before the end of the war and left his precious wife behind. Naturally, she was pretty upset about this. She was despondent. She felt that without her husband, she had nothing left to live for and thusly took her own life. And her spirit has been trapped in the house ever since. Residents who live around the area claim that during thunderstorms you can hear shrill, violent screaming coming from inside the house. Visitors report that walking into the house immediately, you feel a cold chill come over you and a feeling of inescapable dread. Not good. Not good to feel those things. There's stories of people going inexplicably missing connected to this mysterious house. One notable story is that of a British priest who is said to have initially built the property to serve as a church who went missing shortly before it was finished. When an investigation was launched to look for him, they supposedly discovered a secret tunnel that led to a neighborhood in the northeast, and the priest's body was never discovered. Now, another story was that 3 construction workers in the basement of a neighboring building weren't paying attention to what they were doing and broke through a thin wall leading into building 81. They went through the hole and the 3 of them vanished. And now there are people who conspire that this event is what led the government to cancel its plans to demolish the building for fear that it might be haunted. And it hasn't been yet because it's still standing there, and you're more than welcome to visit. You can take a guided ghost tour if you're feeling brave enough, and hopefully you come back. Number 5, Haw Par Villa, Singapore. I love a theme park. Who doesn't? Nothing like walking around, getting to zip around on a roller coaster on a hot summer day and pay $9 for a water bottle. But after a while, you know, all the parks start to blend together. You go down one death-defying drop, you've seen them all, and you seek newer thrills. Now that could be bigger coasters, or it could be a trip to Haw Par Villa, Singapore's infamous scary theme park where the main attractions are incredibly vivid, detailed statues depicting the punishment of crimes and what it's like to go to hell. Initially built in the 30s to be a fun place to teach children about Buddhist, Confucian, and Taoist mythology, it was abandoned during the Second World War when Japanese forces used it as a vantage point to spot incoming ships. It would get rebuilt during the 80s, where it now became the slightly more than unnerving warning about behaving that it is today. Now the main attraction here isn't Space Mountain or Behemoth, but rather the 10 Courts of Hell, a giant exhibition showing all these little statues being gruesomely punished for their sins in the mortal world to warn children to behave. Thieves and gamblers are frozen in blocks of ice, people who cheat are cursed are thrown onto a tree of knives. Basically any scary way you could be punished for doing something bad is depicted here. A lot of it I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to mention under YouTube's guidelines. There's a pretty fun monster named Hufashize who is shown carrying out the punishments to the helpless little statues that inhabit the park. He's almost like a mascot. Now, for what it's worth, there are some other dioramas and statuettes in the park, and they're not all people getting thrown into spike pits. There's some depictions of some Singapore folk tales and some old myths and stuff, but the 10 pits of hell is the real attraction here. I think what this place really needs though is just like one water slide or something, or a roller coaster. Doesn't even have to be a big one, you know, just something to mix up the thrills a little bit. And if you're looking for more thrills and don't want to leave the comfort of your home, I totally get it, because all the thrills are here on Top 5 Scary. We've got just about everything scary or freaky under the sun, anything you can think of: cryptids, aliens, true crime, conspiracies, fake crime. We've got all of it and more. So click on through, subscribe, stay scared, but stay watching this video, okay? We worked hard on it. Number 4, the door to hell, Derwez, Turkmenistan. Coming in at our next entry is all the way in Turkmenistan, Derwez, referred colloquially as the door to hell. So, you know, that's kind of the vibe we're going for here. This unintentionally terrifying tourist destination is a collapsed natural gas field that's been perpetually burning for the last 50 years, and whoa, does it make quite a postcard. They say the candle that burns twice as bright lasts half as long, but this thing is burning pretty bright, and it's been burning for a sincerely long time, so who's to say how accurate that aphorism is? The exact origins of the door to hell are unknown, as the area is a bit remote and nobody really knows when it started. To quote the philosopher William Joel, it's always been burning since the world was turning. Now, there have been some attempts to extinguish this mighty flame, but it is a little more difficult than just tossing a bucket of water over it, as the toxic fumes gushing out of it make it difficult to even get close to it, and that's before talking about just how incredibly hot a giant pit of burning fire and gas is. Only one person has ever descended inside the pit, and he needed to be equipped with a heat-resistant suit as well as a Kevlar harness. He wasn't just going in there. Interestingly, on this expedition, he discovered that there were microbial life forms existing down inside the pit, which could be proof of some tiny little demons. Now, I'll leave you with this one last fun little tidbit about the crater. Many first-hand accounts of visitors, campers, and tourists to the pit have reported that they have seen hordes of spiders en masse sacrificing themselves into the crater, all walking in and burning alive instantly. Now, it's definitely possible that the spiders are just drawn to the bright light in the middle of an otherwise fairly dark desert, but when a mass of spiders are all sacrificing themselves ritualistically into a giant pit of fire called the Gates of Hell, I'm not really sure how much scientific explanations mean to me anymore. Anyway, I just thought you'd enjoy that mental image, and I thought you'd enjoy never sleeping again thinking about that.
In third place, time to visit the Bodie State Historic Park. Formerly a genuine gold mining town located east of the Sierra Nevada mountain range in Mono County, California, and now a national landmark, it is known as one of the best preserved ghost towns in the world. It is named after W.S. Bodie, first name unknown, but rumored to be either William or Waterman, discovered gold in 1859 in an area now known as Brody Bluff. He tragically passed in a snowstorm that same winter and was never present for what came to be. According to pioneer Judge McClinton, the district's name was changed from the proper spelling of B-O-D-E-Y to B-O-D-Y, body, and then a few other phonetic variations to eventually become B-O-D-I-E after a painter in the nearby boomtown of Aurora lettered a sign as such. You know, an accidental typo that stuck through history. While the output from the mine is largely insignificant in terms of mining history, the violence and early endings to lives tell a different story. A particularly harsh winter between 1878 and 1879 claimed hundreds of lives, with many others perishing from falling timber and explosions underground. Bodie as a town grew to have a reputation for violence and lawlessness, and unlike other mining camps at the time, killings were daily events. Robberies, stage holdups, and fights happened at such a frequency that no complete record could be kept. Reverend F.M. Warrington would describe the area in 1881 as a sea of sin lashed by the tempests of lust and passion. The first of 4 mysterious fires tore through the business district in 1892, the next destroying the town mill in 1912, and yet another destroying the same mill again in 1898. The last of the unknown fires demolished most of what was left of the now ghost town in 1932, taking way too many lives too soon in the process. When the last producing mine shut down after 1945, very few people were left living in what was left of the town, and all eventually met untimely ends. One man shot his wife unprompted, and 3 other men from the town took it upon themselves to take his life for that act. According to historians, the ghost of that man would visit the 3 men after his passing, shaking his fist and appearing as if he was cursing them out. Those men soon died of mysterious diseases and illnesses. Visitors to the area have reported meeting spirits that leave them feeling suffocated, seeing doors open and close on their own, and rocking chairs that may or may not have a menacing older lady staring them down, or even the empty chair rocking on its own. Nowadays, Bodie may be a tourist destination, but if you remove anything from the land, even so little as a pebble, you'll be cursed with remorse and tragedy. The park keeps a logbook of all letters and items returned to them, with each thief writing an apology note to Brody for what was taken. The curse is upheld by the ghosts of residents past who guard against thieves and protect the town's treasures. Coming in second place, we have the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, which was renamed to the Stay on Main in 2011. Cited as one of the inspirations for American Horror Story, Hotel, its history includes multiple deaths by a single hand and more unexplainable horrors. The first documented end of life at the Cecil occurred on the evening of January 22, 1927, when Percy Ormond Cook, age 52 at the time, shot himself in the head while inside his hotel room after spending over $40,000 in an attempt to woo back his estranged wife and an attempt to buy happiness. The next death that was reported was in 1931 when a guest, W.K. Norton, passed in his room after taking poison capsules. Too many lives to list were self-taken at the height of the Great Depression in the 40s and 50s. In 1947, it was claimed that Elizabeth Short, otherwise known as the Black Dahlia, was spotted at the hotel days before her gruesome and unsolved end of time. On the topic of unsolved deaths, we move ahead to 1964, when a retired telemarketer named Pigeon Goldie Osgood, who had been a well-known long-term resident at the hotel, was found brutally ended in her room, with said room having been ransacked. In the 1980s, the hotel was home for a few weeks to repeated ender of lives Richard Ramirez, nicknamed the Night Stalker. It's assumed that he engaged in most, if not all, of his killing spree while staying there, being convicted of 13 deaths total in 1989. A copycat of his, Jack Unterweger, stayed at the Cecil in 1991 and was responsible for the strangulation and death of at least 3 women of the night. The most recent death reported took place in 2013, when surveillance footage of Canadian student Elisa Lam behaving erratically in the hotel's elevator went viral. The video depicts Lam repeatedly pressing the elevator's buttons, walking in and out of the elevator, and was recorded shortly before her disappearance. After 19 days of being missing, her naked body was discovered in a water supply cistern on the hotel roof, following complaints from guests of odd-tasting water and low pressure. And finally, in first place, we have the famed Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. It all began in 1881, when the passing of Sarah Winchester's mother, father-in-law, and husband, William Winchester, of the famed Winchester Repeating Arms Company, passed away in quick succession, leaving her with a very large inheritance, assumed to be around $20 million, which would amount to roughly $561.6 million today, and a 50% stake in the company, making her one of the wealthiest women at the time. After living in Connecticut for the majority of her life, a combination of an arthritis diagnosis and meeting with a medium convinced her to start a new life in California. She believed her family to be cursed by victims of the Winchester rifle, and began construction on what was originally a 2-story, 8-room farmhouse, which she purchased in 1886. She and her late husband shared an interest in architecture, and after dismissing all of the architects she originally met with, decided to do all of the home planning herself. She was known to rebuild and abandon construction if anything didn't meet her expectations, which resulted in a maze-like design. It is believed that said maze-like design was mainly intended to confuse and keep spirits from harming her and what was left of her family. According to paranormal investigators Mary Jo Ignafo and Joe Nickel, the bell tower built on the property was used to summon spirits, and Sarah was known to throw lavish parties for the beings she feared in an attempt to please them. It was reported in the San Jose News in 1897 that a 7-story tower was torn down and rebuilt 16 times. As a result of her expansions, there are walled-off exterior windows and doors that lead to nowhere, along with staircases that end suddenly, and as the house grew in size, up to 5 additional levels were added to the home. When the 1906 San Francisco earthquake hit, the damage to the home was quite extensive. The 7-story tower and most of the chimneys collapsed. An entire wing was destroyed, along with the 3rd and 4th story additions, and pipes that were protruding from what were once window boxes. Before the earthquake, the house is believed to have had 500 rooms. And at this time of Sarah's passing in 1922, the house had 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens. Visitors to the house today have reported multiple instances of experiencing cold spots, footsteps, cooking smells, odd sounds, whispering, doors and windows slamming, and feelings of being watched.
Leap Castle. For 700 years, Leap Castle has proudly stood in Ireland, boasting a rather infamous reputation as the most haunted castle in the world, which I feel is a title it must have really fought hard for. I mean, Dracula had a castle, that's gotta be the most haunted castle. The castle was first built in the 13th century, home to the O'Bannon clan, but it would be adopted by the ruling O'Carroll clan, who seized control of it completely by the 15th century. From here, ownership would pass from father to son, but was punctuated by blood. Rival clans, wars, and even family member assassinations were all par for the course of Leap Castle's bloodied history. A grim oubliette where prisoners would be pushed from a window, landing into a pit of spikes, really completed the castle. After centuries of battles and brawls over the castle, it would eventually be burned in 1922 during the Irish Civil War, where it was then abandoned. Now, it goes without saying that a castle that saw as much bloodshed as this is home to a bevy of trapped spirits. The most present one is the Bloody Chapel spirit. Legend has it that one of the O'Carroll children had his own brother assassinated to gain power. His brother, a member of the clergy, is said to restlessly wander the burnt-out chapel. Visitors report seeing beams of light, the smell of burnt rubber, and the shadow of a priest in the stairwell. There's reports of a spirit of a young girl named Emily, who fell from the rampart in the 16th century and tragically lost her life. There's stories of people seeing the ghost of a young girl walking atop the battlements, dragging a misshapen leg as she walks. Today, you can try to visit the Leap Castle if you're feeling daring enough to contact the owner Sean Bryan, who does offer private tours. It'll be you, him, and all the spirits the castle has to offer. And hey, if you're looking for a vacation to a haunted spot but you don't want to leave your room, why not subscribe to Top 5 Scary? We got more haunted sites than you could visit in a lifetime, and we're just a click away. Moving on. Number 4. Separate prison. Going to prison probably sucks. I've never been, but I have heard bad things. A regular prison is pretty bad enough without the wardens getting too creative with their punishments, and then there's prisons like Australia's infamous separate prisons, where it seems like they were trying to set a world record for cruelty. Built in 1833, it was going to serve as a home for some of England's toughest crooks who had to be shipped all the way down under. A home for the toughest criminals needed to be pretty tough, right? Well, unfortunately, it was. Just in the psychological sense, not physical. Separate prison was inspired by the philosophical concept of the panopticon, a template for a prison where all prisoners would be seen under one watchtower. Inmates were to only ever be referred to by the numbers sewn on their uniforms, and were to wear black hoods at all times they weren't in their cells to help them better reflect on their crimes. I'm sure that went over swimmingly with a bunch of violent criminals. Well, it didn't. It mostly led to inmates going mad or offing each other in the hopes that capital punishment was preferable to being imprisoned there, which is a sign that your system is working. Look, it probably goes without saying that this is a haunted prison now, right? I mean, there's over 1,000 bodies buried in unmarked graves on an island that held a prison where everyone had to wear dark hoods. There's no way it's not haunted. Well, it's on this list, so it is. The prison is now owned by Australia's Parks and Wildlife Services, who offer ghost tours of the grounds, where visitors report all sorts of hauntings. Screams, wailings can be heard wandering through the halls, rocking chairs moving by themselves during the night. There's an option on the prison's website to take a tour with just a lantern to guide you, if you're feeling particularly brave. Number 3. Akigara Forest. Akigara Forest is often known as the Sea of Trees. It's a hauntingly beautiful park in Japan that carries a dark reputation. Hundreds of people over the years have come to Akigara to take their own life, leading to its infamous and dark distinction. Spiritualists and paranormal investigators in Japan believe that because there have been so many tragic deaths that happened in Akigara, the forest itself is literally growing denser, and the paranormal activity and dark energy inside as well. This seemingly serene forest has been host to all kind of dark rumors, with some stating that the forest is hallowed ground,
haunted by demonic spirits for years. Others claim that the forest drives people to madness due to high deposits of iron, which cause compasses to malfunction, meaning travelers would get hopelessly lost. Some visitors to Akigawa Forest report hearing screams, wallowing, or crying while walking through the trees. There's no doubt that there's probably a very dark feeling walking through these trees, knowing everything that's ever transpired there. As well, there's something about the knotted mess of all the branches and bark that seems sort of surreal, not quite of this earth, but maybe that's just the legends doing the work for me. Japanese authorities have been doing their best to try and reclaim the forest's haunted reputation, putting up signposts all over to try and deter anyone who would take their own life to instead reach out, call for authorities, and they're no longer publicizing any cases of this happening, hoping to one day salvage the tormented reputation of an otherwise serene spot. Chengdu Ghost City. Chengdu Ghost City. Well, right off the bat, I feel like this is probably a spooky place. You don't name cities Ghost City unless there's a good reason for it. Well, the good reason is that the city got its name during the Eastern Han Dynasty. Two imperial nobles, Yin Changshen and Wang Fangpin, came to Ming Mountain to discover a way to achieve immortality. Combining their two names, Yin and Wang, Ying Wang, translates to King of Hell, and that cemented the site as an underworld hotspot. Since then, the place was built to be a shrine to the underworld, with several temples showing paintings and sculptures of people being punished for their sins and cast into eternal damnation. It's pretty spooky, but honestly it's pretty cool. It's good craftsmanship. And there is some rich folklore to go with the place. Chinese mythology and beliefs say that the dead must pass 3 tests before they're allowed to cross into the underworld, which sounds exhausting to me. I can't even enjoy the relief of death before you're asked to solve some riddles and pass some tests. The village is kind of like a place to conduct these tests, and now you can actually go to it yourself and do it as a tourist attraction and watch performers act out all the trials. But here's the trials. The first test is passing the Bridge of Helplessness, which does sound a little bit like it's from one of the Dark Souls games. It was built during the Ming Dynasty, and good souls are allowed to pass, while evil ones will fall into the water below. Then, you proceed to Ghost Torturing Pass. Oh, that's a fun place to be, where they present themselves for judgment. Finally, the last test is at the entrance to Tianzi Palace, where the ghost must stand on a certain stone on 1 foot for 3 minutes straight. I don't know why I'm standing on 1 foot when the camera is above my waist. You can't tell what I'm doing. I could be standing on as many feet as I want. A good soul will be able to do it, an evil one will fall over. Now this site now is a popular tourist destination due to its very unique structures and fascinating, if not a little bit horrifying decor. I'd want one of those little statues maybe have in my house. I think they're kind of cool, to be honest. And if you're looking for more hellish haunted spots, terrifying tales of poltergeists, ghosts, ghouls, cryptids, aliens, and all kinds of freaks under the sun and above it, while Top 5 Scary is simply the only place to be. Subscribe and stay scared. Number 4, Kaishiku Grounds. If you go to Kaishiku today, you probably wouldn't think much of it at all. Most notable thing around there is a subway station, and aside from that, there's a vegetable market outside, and you can probably score a pretty decent deal on corn. But if you visited Kaishiku back in the 19th century, however, when it served as an execution grounds for prisoners, you probably wouldn't feel too welcome. Thousands of prisoners were brought to the Kaishiku grounds to serve out their last moments. Every autumn, prisoners were taken through the Zwanwumen, which earned the fun nickname, the Gate of Death at dawn. Awesome. The doomed would then be lined up east to west, their necks stretched by rope to make it easier to chop. Well, that's good. We always want to make it as easy as possible for the guy chopping necks. A singular chop to the neck was considered the easy way out of a one-way trip to Kaishiku. Prisoners accused of more serious crimes would be sentenced to lingchi, which was a horrid punishment of slowly slicing someone many times, leading to it sensationally being dubbed the death of 1,000 cuts by outsiders. These executions were designed to be a public spectacle, something for everybody to come and enjoy, something for the whole family to do when no good movies were playing. Kaishiku was one of the busiest intersections in the outer city of Beijing, so crowds would gather to see these things. Most horrifically about this, though, is that sometimes the prisoners who were executed, their bodies were photographed and made into postcards. Given this sordid history, is it much of a surprise at all that passers-by and visitors claim that they can sometimes see ghostly apparitions making their way through the dark hours of the night, or that you can hear screams at all hours? If you ever visit Beijing and make a stop by Kaishiku, take a photo. The postcards they sell in the gift shop are a little, dicey. Number 3, the Forbidden City. The Forbidden City. Well, that tracks.
That sounds very forbidden. Well, back in the 14th century, when it stood as the heart of the Ming dynasty and served as an imperial palace, yeah, you'd have a pretty difficult time getting access if you were but a common serf like myself. But I think they've relaxed their stance just a little bit, because I found more than a few Google recommended articles for tourist things to do in the Forbidden City. I think they just charge like price of admission now. So it's actually very easy to get into the Forbidden City, and the Chinese government does know about this. So the formerly Forbidden City, which is not quite as catchy a name, is a beautiful tourist spot and definitely worth checking out. It's got years upon years of culture and rich history behind it, and most importantly, it's said to be very haunted. The Forbidden City is a pretty credible place for a haunting, if I must say. Ghosts are said to be born out of a place of malice, and the Forbidden City has over 600 years of deaths, assassinations, and who knows how many backstabs and plot twists where the intrigue are out there. The most recurring ghost story coming out of the Forbidden City, though, is that there's a ghost of a weeping woman, all dressed in white, wandering during the dark hours. Following her is a lingering flute playing. Visitors claim at times they see ghost dogs that run through corridors at the edge of the city, digging up ghost bones. Some travelers report feeling an indescribable strangeness while wandering through the temples. Could it just be they're overcome with beauty and majesty of one of the wonders of the world, or is there spectral energy floating through the air? Before we move off on this one, I want you to take a look at this. A travel blog from Vancouver posted about their experiences traveling through the Imperial City. They noted how odd it was that all the doorways had a raised platform. The guide told them that was a way to confuse ghosts to keep them out. They took tons of photos, but only one stood out for them when they came back. See anything suspicious? Like a ghostly figure just kinda hanging right there in the center? Ugh. Number 2, the Charleville Mansion. We're headed back to Shimla for this next one. It sounds like if you're booking a trip to India to take in the sights and the spirits, Shimla is the #1 place to be. Beautiful and filled with ghosts. Once you're done checking out the tunnel, take a trip to the Charleville Mansion, said to be the home to an old poltergeist. It's a century-old abandoned fort built during the British rule, and its first owner was a British officer whose name has seemingly been lost to time. Probably something like Wilford Brimley, though that's a different guy. When the officer and his wife moved into the mansion in 1913, they were unaware of the rumors surrounding it, and they just thought they were getting a great deal on rent. A previous owner had already fled the property because of the hauntings that had taken place. They say that there was a ghostly figure that would slowly apparate in the middle of the night and would smash objects and throw them around the house. Now, despite this house being haunted, the officer himself didn't personally believe in ghosts. He wanted to test this theory of whether or not there was a poltergeist in his home, and so he locked all of the doors in his house and waited, just sat there twiddling his thumbs, tapping his feet, waiting for a ghost to approach. Well, lo and behold, after locking all the doors, he heard a crash upstairs and ran upstairs, opened the door, and found that this one room had all of the furniture and all of the mirrors just utterly demolished. I think he moved out the same week. They say he moved out shortly after, but I can't even imagine he finished packing his bags. Now, the next owner was one Victor Bailey, an assistant secretary working on the railway construction at the time, and I gotta say, there must be some really bad vibes at the Shimla Railway if 2 entries on this list involve it. Anyway, the Baileys moved into the mansion, and at first it seemed like a great deal. Beautiful mansion secluded away from the rest of the world. Until one day at a dinner party, one of their guests reported that he was talking to a lovely English gentleman. Victor Bailey was a bit confused, and when he went back to go introduce himself to this guest, he watched the man disappear into the room the poltergeist destroyed, just vanished out of thin air, and the Baileys packed their bags and left shortly after. The mansion is now deserted and is a hot spot for paranormal activity, so enter if you dare. I actually don't even know if you can go in. Look into that maybe. Number 1, Dumas Beach. We all love a good beach vacation. If you're looking for somewhere sweet to lay back while sipping on something sweet, India is full of some beautiful beaches. But we are not here to talk about anything lovely, okay? This isn't top 5 lovely, although that would be just delightful. I would love to work on top 5 lovely if we're ever gonna make that a channel. Maybe you guys are listening. We're going to Dumas Beach, located along the Arabian Sea in Gujarat. The first thing you'll notice about this beach that stands out is the black sand, which is already pretty unnerving. Most beaches don't look like that. The local folklore says that Dumas Beach used to be a burial ground for Hindu people, and as such, generations of spirits are ingrained into the sand. Building on this legend says that the reason for the obsidian-colored sand is years worth of cremated ash by the burning of the dead, eventually overtaking the sand on the beach. So, I don't know, if you're thinking about making a sandcastle, maybe think twice about that. Maybe keep the flip-flops on too, okay? So what do people say about the spirits out there? Well, it's been said there's a negative aura present in the air, and even just while visiting, tourists and residents say they can feel this sense of dread that something is wrong immediately walking around there. Locals say that the spirits of the dead walk down the beach at night, and visitors claim to hear inexplicable voices, scary laughter, and crying. So if you want a nice, long, romantic walk down the beach in India, just keep in mind that you're gonna have a bit of an audience with you. Some people go so far as to say that there's been apparition, floating orbs seen around the beach. I was having a bit of trouble finding any photos of any ghost sightings around the beach. People say dogs behave strangely, walking through it, howling and barking. There are some who believe that the animals can see spirits we can't, and this could be evidence of that. Now, the most extreme legends say that the tourists go missing around midnight on the beach, but I want to believe if people kept going missing on a beach, they'd shut it down, but I don't know. I've seen Jaws. I know that's not actually that likely. Dolls. I'm not a good Spanish speaker, man. Do you ever get creeped out when you see a baby doll lost somewhere, like on the side of the road or something? You know, a cute little plaything, caked in muck and grime, lost out in the woods? Dolls have been a staple of horror movies and stories for years, and it's easy to see why. There's always a bit of an uncanny valley thing, those lifeless eyes staring at you. Well, imagine if you had to deal with an island of hundreds, if not thousands, of dolls staring at you. Do you think you'd handle that well? South of the center of Mexico City lies the infamous Isla de las Muñecas, or the Island of the Dolls, and I am so sorry to my native Spanish speakers for that butchering. It received the name from the island's inhabitants, which are solely dolls. Legend goes, in the 1950s, the island was the property of one Don Julian Santana Barrera, who used to preach superstitions around and was expelled from the region, living alone on this island. One day, a young girl had drowned and was found washed up in the banks of the island. Santana claims that he heard the girl crying out, "I want my doll," and discovered a washed up doll on the bank as well. He hung the doll up in a tree and claims that since that event, he would find a doll every time he went outside. It became his passion, or obsession, possibly more accurately. Hundreds upon hundreds of dolls line the trees of the island, hanging from just about every inch of available space. Barrera would end up passing away on the island as well, drowning in the same spot that the girl drowned in all those years ago. Locals believe it was a curse from the girl's lingering spirit that still lays dormant on the island. Since then, the island has become a popular tourist spot for paranormal hunters. I mean, look at the place. I didn't even need to tell you a backstory for you to surmise that this is probably a haunted island. It's only accessible via a boat ride, and some guides will actually outright refuse to take you to the Island of the Dolls for fear of cursing. If you do go, I don't know, bring a doll, maybe. Probably couldn't hurt. Just don't take any, okay? This is one of those things where you take only pictures, leave only footprints, and maybe leave a haunted doll as well. And if you're looking to go on a vacation without even leaving your home, Top 5 Scary has tons of videos of cursed places, ghost sightings, aliens, cryptids, true crime, basically anything spooky you can think of, we've done a video on it. Click through the archives, stay subscribed, and stay scared, more importantly. Okay, but let's keep going. We got a whole lot more video to go. Number 4. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium has had a real storied history as far as a building goes. It began its life as a hospital, eventually became a nursing home, and now is considered one of the most haunted spots in the United States. Quite the resume. It first opened in Louisville, Kentucky in the year 1910 to treat new incoming tuberculosis patients. That year, a recently built hospital had moved all of their TB patients over to the sanatorium, who had to put up tents to accommodate all of their new guests. The sanitarium housed thousands of patients over the years before the hospital would close to convert into that nursing home in 1961. Now, the estimates may vary because there's not a lot written down, but the estimates say that as many as 64,000 people died inside the sanatorium. 64,000! That is insane! Now, if you've played Red Dead Redemption, I don't need to tell you how bad tuberculosis is. It used to be dubbed the White Plague for its high mortality rate, before more advanced treatments became commonplace in curing the illness in the late 40s. So around the time of the sanatorium, it was mostly a death sentence. So is it any surprise that Waverly is said to contain lost, tormented souls unable to move forward? No, not particularly. There's an underground tunnel from the sanatorium to the bottom of the hill, which was used to transport dead patients. The tunnel is supposedly haunted by those who made their last journey through it. One of the most notable haunted spots in the building though is room 502, which is said to contain the ghost of a nurse in uniform. There's a couple different legends corresponding to this. One says that the nurse took her life jumping out of that window, and another who said the nurse took her life by hanging because she was pregnant. And neither one of those is particularly pleasant to think about as the good option. These days, if you're feeling particularly brave, the sanatorium has opened its doors once again, offering tours for would-be paranormal investigators looking to get a couple beeps on their EVP meters. Just don't say that nobody warned you.
Now, in second place, we have Michael Taylor's home in West Yorkshire. In 1974, Michael's wife, Christine, stated to a Christian fellowship group to which they both belonged that his relationship with the leader of the group, Marie Robinson, was carnal in nature. Michael admitted that he felt evil within him and eventually attacked Marie verbally, who screamed back at him. Now, during the next meeting, he received an absolution, but his behavior continued to become more erratic. As a result, the local vicar called in other ministers experienced in the deliverance of preparation to cast out the demons residing within the man. The exorcism, which occurred between the 5th and 6th of October 1974 at St. Thomas's Church in Gobber, was led by Father Peter Vincent, the Anglican priest of St. Thomas's, and was aided by a Methodist clergyman, the Reverend Raymond Smith. According to Bill Ellis, an authority on folklore and the occult in contemporary culture, the exorcists believed that they had, in an all-night ceremony, invoked and cast out at least 40 demons, including those of incest, bestiality, blasphemy, and lewdness. In the end, exhausted, they allowed Taylor to go home, although they felt that at least 3 demons were still left in him. While at home, Taylor brutally ended his wife Christine by attacking her with his bare hands, tearing her eyes and tongue out and almost tearing her face off. At his trial in March, Taylor was acquitted on the grounds of insanity. He was sent to Broadmoor Hospital for 2 years, and then spent another 2 years in a secure ward in Bradford before being released. In first place, we have the Bell Witch in Tennessee. In the early 1800s, John Bell moved his family from North Carolina to the Red River Bottomland in Robertson County, Tennessee, settling in the community that later became the present-day Adams, Tennessee. One day in 1817, John was inspecting his cornfield when he encountered a strange-looking animal sitting in the middle of a corn row. Describing it as having the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit, John fired several times at the being in shock when the animal simply vanished. He thought nothing more of the incident until later that night when the family began hearing thumping sounds outside the walls of their log home. The mysterious sounds continued each night, always growing louder and more forceful. In the weeks that followed, the Bell children began waking up frightened, complaining that rats were gnawing at their bedposts, their bed covers were pulled from them, and their pillows tossed onto the floor by an invisible entity. As time went on, the Bells began hearing faint whispering voices, which were too weak to completely understand, but sounded like a feeble old woman singing hymns. The encounters escalated, and the Bells' youngest daughter, Betsy, began experiencing brutal encounters with this invisible entity. It would pull her hair and slap her relentlessly, often leaving welts and handprints on her face and body. The family had kept the disturbances a secret until that point in time, but this led to them sharing their story with their neighbor, James Johnston. Now, skeptical at first, and I can't say I blame him, James and his wife spent the night at the Bell home. Things began peacefully, but once they retired for the evening, they were subjected to the same terrifying disturbances that the Bells had been experiencing. After their bed covers were yanked off and James was slapped, he sprang out of bed, exclaiming, "In the name of the Lord, who are you and what do you want?" The entity didn't respond for the rest of the night, so it was pretty peaceful for them. Now, the next morning he explained to the Bells that the culprit was likely an evil spirit, kind that the Bible talks about. The entity's voice strengthened over time and became loud and unmistakable. It sang hymns, quoted scripture, carried on intelligent conversations, and once even quoted, word for word, 2 sermons that were preached at the same time on the same day, but 13 miles apart. Word of the supernatural phenomena soon spread outside the settlement, even to Nashville. Then Major General Andrew Jackson became interested in the so-called Bell Witch in 1819, and decided to visit the home to investigate. As Andrew's entourage, made up of several men, well-groomed horses, and a large wagon approached the Bell property, the wagon jolted to a sudden stop. It had become stuck in a muddy creek bed, and the horses were unable to pull it. Well, at least that was what the men thought. After several minutes of cursing and trying to coax the horses into pulling the wagon, Jackson proclaimed, "By the eternal boys, that must be the Bell Witch!" And suddenly, a disembodied woman's voice told them that they could proceed, and she would see them again later that evening. You know, totally not ominous at all. They were then able to proceed across the property, up the lane, and to the Bell home. Now that night, one of the men claimed to be a witch tamer, saying his silver bullets would end any evil spirit they came into contact with, and the entity would fear him. Now, as your friendly narrator, I can see where this is going. Can you? So immediately after that stupid comment, the man screamed and began jerking his body in different directions, complaining that he was being stuck with pins and hurt severely. A strong, swift kick to the man's, lower area from an invisible foot sent him out the door. To the shock and surprise of no one, the entity was angry and announced that there was another fraud in the group, but she'd wait until the next night to identify him. Now terrified out of their minds, Andrew's men begged to leave the Bell farm. He insisted on staying. He wanted to know who the other fraud was. Now what happened after that isn't super clear, but Andrew and his entourage were spotted in nearby Springfield early the next morning, going back to Nashville. He later proclaimed, "I would rather fight the British at New Orleans than fight the Bell Witch." The entity continued to express disdain for John Bell, relentlessly vowing to end him. Now John had been experiencing episodes of twitching in his face and difficulty swallowing for almost a year, and it grew worse with time. By the fall of 1820, his declining health had confined him to the house, where the malicious entity continuously removed his shoes when he tried to walk, and slapped his face when he recovered from his numerous seizures. Her shrill voice was heard all over the farm, cursing and chastising Old Jack Bell, which was the nickname she had given him. John Bell breathed his last breath on the morning of December 20th, 1820, after slipping into a coma the day before. Now, immediately after his passing, his family found a vial of strange black liquid in the cupboard. John Jr. stupidly sprinkled 2 drops onto the cat's tongue. The cat jumped into the air, rolled over in midair, and had passed before it hit the floor. The entity then exclaimed, "I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night, which fixed him." John Jr. then tossed the mysterious vial into the fireplace, where it burst into a bright blue flame and shot up the chimney. Now, over time, young Betsy Bell became interested in Joshua Gardner, a young man who lived nearby, and with the blessings of their parents, they decided to marry. Everyone was happy about their engagement. Well, almost. The evil, mysterious entity became furious and repeatedly ordered Betsy not to marry Joshua. The young couple couldn't frequent the river, the fields, or the cave to play without the entity nagging them. The constant pressure was more than Betsy could handle, and on Easter Monday of 1821, she met Joshua at the river and broke off the engagement. Shortly after that, the entity visited her mom, Lucy, and told her that it was leaving, but it would return in 7 years. And the entity returned in 1828, as promised. Now, most of the 3-week return visit centered on John Jr., making predictions of the future. The entity that tormented the Bell family and the Red River settlement almost 200 years ago is often blamed for the unexplainable manifestations that occurred near the old Bell farm today. The faint sounds of people talking and children playing can sometimes be heard in the area, and it's not uncommon to see candlelights dance throughout the fields late at night. Photography is especially difficult. Some pictures taken in the area show mist, orbs of light, and other phenomena, including human-like figures who were not present when the pictures were taken. The cause of the Bell family's torment 200 years ago, along with today's continued phenomena in the area, remain a mystery. Numerous theories have all been put forth, but have also all been debunked. Most researchers agree that something had to have caused the incidents at Red River in the early 1800s. That gave rise to the Bell Witch legend as we know it today. And that's the end of today's list and additions to both my I need to visit and avoid at all cost lists. Now, all of these places either had the events happen during the Warrens' lifetime or were noted haunted places during their most active years, leaving my curiosity to wonder why they didn't visit them.
Area 51, Nevada. Starting out our list, we have the most obvious entry. In the American state of Nevada, you will find no shortage of places to go on vacation. Despite being a desert, you will find locations like the Hoover Dam, Red Rock Canyon, and of course, the various casinos and attractions in Las Vegas. Of course, a location that you will not find yourself getting into is the military base located on the salt flats of Groom Lake, which is colloquially known as Area 51. For years, Area 51 has been the subject of conspiracy theories involving everything from government testing to UFO activity. Adding to its mystique is the fact that the US government wouldn't even officially acknowledge that it existed until 2013. Its official use is apparently the testing of experimental aircraft, but the level of security at the base is extremely high, even for a government base. Employees of Area 51 are flown in on a private airline known as Janet Airlines, with Janet being an acronym that stands for just another non-existent terminal. Some former employees have reported getting paid through private companies that they have no involvement with in order to avoid a paper trail linking them to the base. Some theories about the purpose of Area 51 include it being used to develop energy weapons for the Strategic Defense Initiative, to develop time travel technology, and most infamously, for studying, storing, and reverse engineering the remains of crashed alien ships, including those that were found at the Roswell crash site. As it is a closed-off and secret government facility, tourists are of course not allowed to get into the site, with signs around the perimeter promising prosecution and possibly even deadly force against trespassers. Of course, this hasn't stopped alien enthusiasts from making the journey to Nevada to see the number of Area 51 and alien-adjacent attractions, such as bus tours of the extraterrestrial highway, the black mailbox, and the outskirts of this secret government facility. Number 4. The Princess Theatre, Alberta. In the Canadian city of Edmonton, Alberta, there is no shortage of movie theaters, with multiple malls housing multiple multiplexes, enabling local cinema lovers to watch the latest in entertainment. However, for many years, the crown jewel for movie lovers in Edmonton was not the Cineplex in West Edmonton Mall, or even the Garneau Theatre, which shows independent and classic films. No, for many years, the most classic of the theaters was the Princess Theatre on White Avenue. Built in 1914 for a then staggering $75,000, this 3-story single-screen theater would show moving pictures, concerts, and vaudeville acts, while also having a basement billiards parlor for those not interested in the shows. The theater was known for implementing extremely novel and modern elements, such as a fireproof projection room, an electric time projection clock, an electronic ticketing machine, forced air ventilation, and even refrigerated fountain beverages. The theater was soon drawn into economic hardship and was forced to construct rental apartments on the upper and lower floors. One of these apartment renters was soon met with a tragic and disturbing end. According to local legend, an engaged woman lived in one of the upper apartments, but mere days before she was due to be wed, she was scorned by her fiancé. She was found hanging from the rafters while dressed in her wedding dress. In the years that followed, employees and patrons of the princess reported seeing a ghostly woman wearing a white dress who would suddenly appear and disappear, ascending the theater's grand staircase, wandering its ornate gold-leafed halls, or even hovering over the projection room. The princess was a staple for local cinema lovers, as well as fans of the paranormal for decades. But if you were interested in taking in a show or catching a glimpse of the ghostly bride, you may have missed your window, as the theater closed its doors after 108 years of operation in mid-2022. No new owners or plans for the historical theater have been announced, and the doors remained locked to the public, with only the ghosts still residing inside of this historic building.
Number 3. Hoabashu Forest. Our next entry is going to take us to Transylvania, to Romania, the Hoabashu Forest, and please do forgive me, my Romanian ain't quite what it used to be, and it was never much to begin with. The forest is beautiful, if not more than a little haunted, with countless reports of all kinds of paranormal activity stemming from within the hectares of the creepy, bountiful woods. The place kind of looks like it's the set to a Halloween movie as is, with the twisted trees curling ever outwards. Now, there are many legends and stories coming out of the forest. It's even been called the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. According to one particularly exciting legend, a girl went wandering in the forest one day to escape the difficulties of life and take her mind off her troubles. She found herself lost in the forest and nature, but she never returned. Her family looked and looked for her, but to no avail. They never found her and assumed that their daughter had passed until she reappeared and walked home 5 years later, unsure where she'd been and didn't remember anything of the experience and hadn't aged a day on her. That is far from the only strange thing that's happened here. Take a listen to this folktale. A shepherd and his flock of over 200 sheep were said to have vanished without a single trace. You'd think there'd be one footprint out of 200 sheep. Another story tells of a woman who went wandering through the forest and came back and discovered she had a 15th century coin placed in her pocket, as if a ghost left her a little surprise to take home. In the 1960s, biologist Alexander Sift photographed a strange object that he saw above the sky of the Hoabashu Forest, which would gain notoriety as a UFO sighting. I'm gonna stop and ask here, basically what wasn't happening here that was supernatural? Is there anything normal natural about this forest, or is it just all haunted all the way down? If we've had any Romanian viewers, you may let us know about this one. Yeah. Number 2. Castle of Good Hope. Coming up next on our list of haunted hotspots is the Castle of Good Hope in Cape Town, South Africa. It was first built in the 17th century by the Dutch East India Company, so bad vibes there to begin with. It's the oldest colonial building in South Africa, and if you believe the local legends, is allegedly one of the more paranormal spots in the entire country. Now, the first ghost sighting came from 1915, when a tall, pale, mysterious man dressed in black, much like yours truly, was spotted walking seemingly out of nowhere alongside one of the castle's ramparts before vanishing as soon as he appeared. Huh, well that's pretty weird and seemed like an isolated incident until in 1947 this same strange man just couldn't stop appearing, making regular visits and check-ins for the castle weeks on end. He would be seen jumping off the castle's wall, seemingly plummeting to his doom, only to reappear again, to do it all again. Maybe he's just having fun? I imagine being a ghost is dreadfully boring. He kinda sounds like a sick ghost, all things considered. Sounds like he just wants to bungee jump, hang 10, vibe out. I could get down with this ghost. Another popular ghost story from the castle is that of their former governor, one Peter Gisbert van Noot. You try saying that 5 times fast, I barely made it through that once. He passed in the castle in the 23rd of April, 1728, the same day he had sentenced 7 army deserters to the death sentence. Now the story goes that one of these soldiers hexed him and demanded he face and watch the execution. Van Noot was apparently more than a little bit squeamish at this prospect and refused the invitation. And if you believe the stories, later that day was found dead at his desk, slumped over. And some believe his ghost still wanders the castle's halls. And he's far from the only spirit reported to inhabit the castle. There's also reports of hearing a man and a woman arguing outside of a guard station, and as well a lady of the manor who visits esteemed privileged ghosts. Imagine that, getting haunted by the 1%. Number 1, the Hellfire Club. Now, don't get your hopes up too much. The party won't be meeting for a D&D session with Eddie Munson anytime soon at this Hellfire Club, although the name might come from it. I'm not sure, to be honest. If the Duffer Brothers want to clear that up for me, let me know. My DMs are open. The Hellfire Club in Dublin, otherwise known as the Montpelier Hill, was once home to a hunting lodge in the 17th century owned by one Richard Parsons, a man obsessed with black magic and the occult. It's said that the Hellfire Club was a club for Satanists, and the leader was referred to as the King of Hell and would dress like the devil during meetings. Honestly, sounds like kind of a fun club. All meetings they left a seat open just in case Lucifer wanted to drop by for a few hands of poker, clink some glasses with them. Stories go on to say that members of the Hellfire Club participated in all manner of dark and sinister ritual, sacrificing cats, goats, and if legends are to be believed, even the servants of the Hellfire Club were offered some membership package. Now, there's a very famous story out of the club that says one fateful day, a strange man appeared and asked if he could join in at the card game for the night. As there was always an open seat, they offered it to him. And during the game, a player dropped his cards, and when he went underneath the table to retrieve them, saw that the strange man had hooves in place of his feet. And upon rising from the table, the stranger had vanished. Probably for the best. I cannot imagine that a game of cards against the devil would be beneficiary for anyone except maybe Satan. I would not call his bluff. I would just fold every hand. The building was scorched and set ablaze in 1750, with many differing accounts as to what caused the flame. Some say it was the club itself that set the building on fire to give it a more intimidating appearance and keep out outsiders. Some say the devil did it as retribution for a ritual, and some say it was just a duel or a brawl that ended badly and got a bit rowdy. Whatever the case, the Hellfire Club relocated their activities sometime around 1760 and abandoned their original building, where it still stands today. You can visit it today, and it's a pretty popular tourist destination for urban explorers and paranormal investigators who want to see if perhaps there's any residual black magic in the soil and walls there.
Fifth place, we have the Bija Thomas Octagon House. Mr. Thomas was a rather wealthy man who owned a farm, several textile factories, and also dabbled in land surveying. He just couldn't keep himself out of monetary debt, and therefore there are several court records bearing his name, which outline some of his personal assets. Among his personal assets were 12 servants. It is rumored locally that he not only mistreated them horribly, he killed some of them on the property and inside the house. Now, after the passing of Mr. Thomas and his wife, and after the house had passed through the hands of his many children at some point, in the early 1900s, the house became a residence again. Now, during this time, it was apparently difficult to keep any one person in the house for any length of time due to the haunted nature. According to the documentation on this property, no one actually lived in the house any later than the late 1930s. During the 50s, the house became just another building used for storage before being condemned sometime in the late 60s, early 70s. Witnesses say the house is haunted, especially in the dark room or storage room. Apparitions of shackled, injured servants and red fluids dripping down the walls have been reported, along with a feeling of being cold in the storage room. In fourth place, we have the Abbey of the Black Hag, locally known as St. Catherine's Abbey or simply as Old Abbey. It's located roughly 2 miles east of the village of Shanagolden, in the townland of Old Abbey. One of the earliest recorded nunneries in Ireland, with its first official record being around 1298, it was built on land donated by John Fitzthomas, and has the typical layout for abbeys of its time, with the dining hall, cells, isolated meditation areas, and other rooms still being able to be identified amongst the ruins today. Now, during the 15th century, there was a major battle for supremacy in the area, between the Earl Fitzgerald and the prestigious Butler family, of which the Earldom of Ormond belonged. It got to such an extent that the local bishop was known to pray for peace between the families at masses. During one of the nightly attacks, Earl Fitzgerald attempted to get his wife to safety, but as he was pulling her onto his horse, an arrow pierced her thigh, shattering the bone and spraying red bodily fluids. As he rode on, the Countess appeared to have succumbed to her injury, leading the Earl to seek sanctuary at St. Catherine's. The heartbroken man was certain his wife had passed, so he swiftly buried her beneath the altar and continued elsewhere to find safety. As the night went on, the nuns and residents began to hear hair-raising screams and made the decision to rebury the Countess in hopes of bringing her peace. When they dug up the body, they discovered that her fingers were broken and her nails had been torn off. The poor woman had been buried alive, with a very slow and torturous end of her life. To this day, it is believed that the Countess has been unable to find peace and continues to scream in anguish, waiting for her husband to save her from a fate truly worse than death. Now, moving slightly ahead in time, we come to the Black Nun herself. Described as one in the order that wasn't content with being humble, helping others over herself, and the servitude to God, she instead craved power. The Hag had her own cell, where she worshipped Satan and performed black magic, becoming a slave to the occult. Now, this was the highest form of blasphemy in the church, and the other nuns in the order fled the abbey, while the Hag remained in her, well, now House of Darkness. To complete her rituals, the Black Nun would venture into the local community and perform depraved, lewd acts and offer sacrifices, with bones of young community members later discovered on the grounds. In modern times, visitors have reported seeing the dark, shadowy figure of a nun wandering, the feeling of being constantly watched, and a disembodied hand reaching towards them. It has been reported that flashlights cannot function in the nun's cell, and modern batteries drain way too quickly to have any sort of rational explanation. Now, in third place, we have the Vampire of Highgate Cemetery. In 1967, 2 teenage girls were walking home along the nearby Swains Lane, claimed to have witnessed the dead rising from their graves by the cemetery's north gate. Another teenager had been awoken one night with something cold and clinging on her hand, which left prominent marks the next morning, while reports circulated of a tall man in a hat walking the area, before melting through the cemetery's walls. On Halloween night of 1968, a group of teenagers interested in the occult visited Tottenham Park Cemetery at a time when it was being regularly vandalized by intruders. According to a report in the London Evening News, on November 2nd, the teens arranged flowers taken from graves in circular patterns, with arrows of blooms pointing to a new grave, which was uncovered. A coffin was opened and the body inside disturbed, but their most macabre act was driving an iron stake in the form of a cross through the lid and into the chest of the corpse. In a letter to the Hampstead and Highgate Express on February 6th of 1970, David Farrant wrote that when passing Highgate Cemetery on Christmas Eve of 1969, he had glimpsed a gray figure, which he had considered to be supernatural, and asked if others had seen anything similar. Sean Manchester claimed David's gray figure was a vampire, and the media quickly latched on, embellishing the tale with stories of the vampire being king of the vampires or of practicing black magic. See, that kind of intrigues me. King of the vampires? I'd be on the first flight to meet him. A rivalry grew between David and Sean, with each claiming that he could and would expel or destroy the specter. Sean declared that he would hold an exorcism on Friday the 13th of March, which, hey, that's a pretty good spooky date for that sort of thing. ITV conducted interviews with both men and others who claimed to have seen supernatural figures in the cemetery, which were transmitted early on the evening of the 13th, and within 2 hours a mob of hunters from all over London and beyond swarmed over the gates and walls into the locked cemetery, despite police efforts to control them. Now, a couple of months later, on the 1st of August, the charred and headless remains of a woman's body were found, not too far from the catacomb, believed to have been used in a black magic ritual. David was found by police in the churchyard beside the cemetery one night in August, carrying a crucifix and a wooden stake. He was arrested, but when the case came to court, it was dismissed. Now, there was more publicity about David and Sean when rumors spread that they would meet in a magician's duel on Parliament Hill on Friday the 13th of April in 1973, which never occurred.
Number 3. Mausoleum of the first Qin Emperor, Qin Shi Huang. The tomb of former Emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, is notable for many reasons. Maybe it was because in 1974, when farmers from the Shaanxi province were digging a well, they discovered hundreds upon hundreds of terracotta soldiers, complete with horses, chariots, officers, infantry, a court, I think even some bears, oh my. They discovered one of the world's greatest archaeological wonders, 2,000 terracotta soldiers in Qin Shi Huang's tomb. The tomb was built like this basically to serve as history's most impressive flex. Qin Shi Huang wanted to make it good and clear that even in death, he held more might and more power than anyone could ever imagine. You know that saying, you can't take it with you? Well, he wanted to take it with him. He wanted his own army to serve him in the afterlife. The wild part about this is we don't even know how far it goes, since it still hasn't fully been uncovered even all these years later. Those thousands of terracotta soldiers might just be the first wave of guys. While he reigned, Qin Shi Huang wanted to make very sure that his tomb was a good approximation of his legacy, so thousands of laborers worked tirelessly for decades to create an emperor's tomb. They think that 700,000 laborers worked on this for 40 years. That's already unbelievable, but Qin Shi Huang only even lived to be 49, so good thing they got that done in time, eh? Qin Shi Huang himself is buried beneath an enormous pyramid mound that stands a good distance away from the rest of the tomb. Now here's where the haunted part starts to come in. According to historians, this central tomb contains treasures and wondrous objects he attained during his life, including a flowing river of pure mercury, which doesn't really sound like the greatest idea, but back then they thought that made you immortal. Soil testing the nearby areas does have elevated levels of mercury, so that might actually be true. No one is too eager to check though, since it sounds like Qin Shi Huang kitted this place out to keep any would-be Nathan Drakes or Lara Crofts from raiding this uncharted tomb. It's said that it's got ancient ballistas and all sorts of traps like mechanisms that'll fire arrows at potential grave robbers, and hey, that mercury vapor probably isn't doing you any favors, so don't try to breathe that in. In any case, the Chinese government has been in no rush to explore what's down there. It's best to let the sleeping dead lie, especially when the sleeping dead has thousands of personal bodyguards, and it's probably haunted, let's be real. Number 2. Snake Island. Our next entry, Isla de Quimada Grande, is formally dubbed as Snake Island, which really should tell you right off the bat that whatever I'm about to describe is not a friendly place. Traditionally, places are only named things like Snake Island if they're like, filled to bursting with snakes, or if they're home to like a snake-themed supervillain or something. I'm pretty sure the guys who fought G.I. Joe lived on Snake Island. Anyway, Snake Island is called that because by conservative estimates, there's roughly a snake for every square meter of the island, meaning there's anywhere from 4,000 golden lancehead vipers or more living there. There's more snakes than there are people, and that's because most Brazilian locals know way better than to go to an island where one of the most venomous snakes on the planet live. Yeah, I left that part out. Well, I'm talking about it now. It's not just like garter snakes slithering about here. Isla de Quimada Grande is home to the golden lancehead, a beautiful creature in its own right that just happens to be one of the most lethal bites to humans. A bite from this snake can cause, let's list off some fun side effects: kidney damage, necrosis, brain hemorrhaging, venom poisoning, and oh, my favorite, internal intestinal damage. So just leave them alone. Even if for some bizarre reason I've told you all of that and you just love going to places you're not meant to and you're just dying for a chance to go visit venomous Snake Island, you are going to run into a bit of trouble because it's literally forbidden. The Brazilian government strictly monitors those who travel. Naval forces do visit annually to maintain the lighthouse, and there's a research station to study and analyze the local population, but all of these visits are accompanied by paramedics and trained doctors, just in case any of the locals decide to say hello the only way they know how. Am I the only one who thinks the golden lancehead is kind of cute, like in a little weird way? I don't want one as a pet, but I don't know, I think these danger noodles have very cute little eyes, but maybe that's just one of my red flags. And number 1, Paveglia. This list has not been pleasant. I guess I should have expected that, given the tone of all of these wretched, horrible, and haunted places. So let's close this list off and find somewhere nice and sunny to get away from all of life's woes. Maybe somewhere nice like, I don't know, Italy? Maybe somewhere off the coast of Venice, like the island of Paveglia? Now, Poveglia is an infamous island in Italian history. It once served as a quarantine zone and final resting place for victims of the Black Plague. You know that one. As the plague ravaged Europe and paranoia set in across the lands, it was said that anyone who showed so much as a symptom, if you had a runny nose, they shipped you off to Poveglia to live out the rest of your days. Oftentimes, they would send people who weren't even really sick. You just complain about a headache trying to get a day off work and you're on a longboat to the last island you're ever going to go to. It's said that over 50% of the island's soil is made of burned human ash. Let that set in for a second. The ground itself is haunted. In the early 19th century, the island converted from a quarantine zone to a mental asylum because I guess it thought that that wasn't scary enough. The asylum did not do much to improve Poveglia's reputation. Instead of being home to the sick, now it was home to droves of mentally unwell patients being made into victims via doctors' sick experiments. Cruel doctors at the asylum would impose their patients into lobotomies with no concern for sanitation or their safety, with chisels, drills, and rarely if ever using anesthetic. An old ghost story has it that the main doctor at the asylum was haunted by the spirits of his former patients and the crimes he'd committed, and it drove him to such madness that he cast himself off the bell tower of the island, where they say his screams can still be heard. Now, if I told you all of that and you still want to visit, first of all, why? And second of all, you're going to need to be pretty crafty, as it's totally completely forbidden. You will be pressed to the fullest extent of the law if you're caught trespassing, not even remotely worth the risk if you ask me. At best, you get arrested. At worst, haunted for the rest of your days. Number 5. The Castle of Good Hope. Coming up first on our list of haunted hotspots is going to be the Castle of Good Hope in Cape Town, South Africa. It was first built in the 17th century by the Dutch East India Company, so you just know there's bad vibes there to begin with. It's the oldest colonial building in South Africa, and if you believe the local legends, it's allegedly one of the most paranormal spots in the country. The first reported paranormal sighting from the castle came from 1915, when a tall, pale, mysterious man dressed in black, he sounds familiar, whose attire didn't match the era at all, country or anything, appeared seemingly out of nowhere, walking alongside one of the castle's ramparts before vanishing as soon as he appeared. Now that's pretty weird, definitely, not quite enough to label a place haunted, but it was a one-off incident, right? Well, in 1947, this same strange man kept appearing, making regular visits for weeks on end. He'd be jumping off the castle's walls, seemingly plummeting to his doom, only to reappear again to do it all again. I gotta be honest, he sounds kinda sick, all things considered. Sounds like he just wants to bungee jump and vibe out as a ghost. Another popular story from the castle is that of former governor, one Peter Giesbert van Noot. Whew, you try saying that 5 times fast. He passed in the castle on the 23rd of April, 1728, the same day he had sentenced 7 army deserters to the death sentence. The legend has it that one of these soldiers hexed him and demanded he face him and watch the execution. Van Noot was apparently a bit squeamish and refused the invitation, and later that day was found dead at his desk, slumped over. And some believe his ghost still wanders the castle's halls. And there were more ghosts I couldn't even fit into this one video because there's so many hauntings from this place. I recommend you read up about it afterwards. And if you want way more videos about haunted spots, ghosts, goblins, aliens, cryptids, conspiracies, true stories, fake stories, we got all of that and then some. So click through on Top 5 Scary, find something to watch, something to fall asleep to, I don't judge. Stay subscribed, stay scared, but stay watching this video. We worked hard on it. Alright, moving on through. Number 4, the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone. Maybe this one's a bit of an obvious pick, but our next entry is going to be the infamous Chernobyl Exclusion Zone, the real-life, post-apocalyptic wasteland of Pripyat. Have you ever heard the word Canopsia? Maybe not. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. I only learned this word today. But it refers to a feeling of seeing an atmosphere that you know is supposed to be populated, but isn't. And I feel like that word definitely applies to Chernobyl, or like liminal is a very good feeling too. It is kind of a liminal space, because you see all of these buildings and you can imagine a life happening there, but it's frozen in time. The Chernobyl blast would be enough to cover a whole video and then some. I heard there was a very good HBO series about it. And trying to cover it in under 2 minutes would be foolhardy, so here's the super quick Coles Note versions. Is that a late night safety test simulating a station blackout power failure ended up starting a huge blast, which eventually threw radioactive material that blew all over Pripyat and the surrounding areas, causing everyone to have to pick up everything and evacuate, never to return. 50,000 people used to live here, and now it's a ghost town. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I only know that line from COD 4. All gillied up, best level in the series. That one's just for my gamers out there. Now you can actually visit Chernobyl, although they don't really recommend you do. You know, it's not a fun hotspot for tourism or anything. People who delve into the zone for recreation, or to find things, are called stalkers, named after the Tarkovsky movie of the same name, revolving around visits to a strange zone, and not the video game Stalker, where bandits raid the apocalyptic zone, although you would be forgiven for thinking that. Visiting the zone is no easy task. For one, it's recommended that you absolutely go with a guide or someone who knows the area very well, and then come all the requirements. You mustn't touch anything whatsoever. No vegetation. There are wild dogs that live in Chernobyl, and they're very cute, but you can't touch them at all because there could be traces of radiation in their fur. You have to wear an outfit that covers as much as possible. Big boots, don't show up in your sunners and flip-flops. They recommend wearing a mask too to avoid inhaling any dust or any of the radioactive particles that could still be floating around in the air. Real life radiation, not half as fun as the comic books. You are very unlikely to come out of here with any web slinging superpowers. More likely just gonna have a bad cough and your family's gonna get real sad. You're asked not to enter any buildings because some are so degraded that they could collapse literally at any minute with the wrong pressure applied somewhere, and then you're just another tragedy. Now, I've never been, but from pictures, Chernobyl genuinely seems unreal, like it's not part of the world, It seems like it's something out of a movie or a video game, but it's this harrowing, soul-crushing reflection of our reality, a stark warning on the dangers of nuclear power, and a grim reminder that your life as you know it can be upended forever in but a moment.
Number 3. Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, Virginia. In a world that seems to constantly be on the brink of disaster, it is comforting to know that the US government has a safe location where the elite and powerful will be safe from destruction they most likely caused. Such is the purpose of the US Department of Homeland Security operated base located near Bluemont, Virginia. The Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, otherwise known as the High Point Special Facility, has been in operation since the late 1800s, when it was used as a simple weather station. In 1928, the observatory building became President Calvin Coolidge's summer White House, before being used as a civilian public service facility where conscientious objectors could serve the government during World War II without having to go into conflict. In 1959, an underground facility was completed and designated Area B. The other buildings that were referred to as Area A became training facilities for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Around this time, it became a relocation site for high-level civilian and military officials in the event of a national disaster, such as an attack or massive natural disaster. It plays a major role in many of the United States government's contingency plans for maintaining the continuity of government. It has a high-frequency radio system, which connects it to most federal public safety agencies, which allows the president to access and use the emergency alert system so that they can broadcast emergency alerts or warnings. An example of its use was on September 11th, 2001, when the majority of congressional leadership were taken from Washington by helicopter and evacuated to Mount Weather. The National Art Gallery has also developed a program that would have the country's most valuable paintings helicoptered over to the facility in the event of an attack, in order to make sure important cultural pieces are preserved in the event of an attack that would otherwise destroy them. Obviously, this site is off limits to all but the most high level of people, and it is not open for tourists. But if you are nearby and see a large group of frantic-looking officials arriving by helicopter, or you see a message on TV from the president being broadcast from this facility, be very afraid, as it means that something terrifying and horrible has or is about to occur. Number 2. Boblo Island Amusement Park, Ontario. North America has no shortage of amusement parks for families and thrill seekers alike to visit. The Canadian province of Ontario has several to choose from, including Canada's Wonderland, Great Wolf Lodge, and Splashtown Niagara. One theme park that you won't be able to buy a ticket for, however, is the Boblo Island Amusement Park. Located on the island of Bois Blanc, just above the mouth of the Detroit River. The park was opened in 1898 and used a ferry system to service guests from Ontario and Detroit and bring them to the island, where they had a variety of attractions to keep them occupied and having fun. Some of these included the Falling Star, a log flume, a theater, a sky tower, a Ferris wheel, a zoo, a carousel, and a dance hall, financed by Henry Ford himself. It also had 3 roller coasters, the Screamer, the Nightmare, and the Sky Streak. It also had Boblo's scoot boats, which were essentially aquatic bumper cars. The park operated for many years before eventually closing down for financial reasons in late 1993. There are still ferries that operate in order to get island residents on and off the island, but the now abandoned amusement park has been declared off limits by the property owners. Of course, the dilapidated carousel building, dance pavilion, and sky tower have since proven to be too appealing for urban explorers to keep away from, and the eerie overgrown site still sees a variety of visitors. Like any good amusement park, it of course has a reputation for being haunted by a variety of ghosts. My personal favorite of the ghost stories is the story of Smiley the Magician. Back when the theater still operated and showed a variety of different performers, one of the most consistently booked performers of the 30s and 40s was a magician named Smiley Smilovich. Smiley was an old-school magician who had trained with Houdini in the late 20s and was known for his seemingly death-defying tricks. One of his most famous tricks was a metamorphosis trick, where he would put a trunk on stage, climb into it, lock it, and then have the trunk set on fire. He would escape through a trap door, the trunk would burn away, revealing that he had escaped, and the crowd would go wild. One day he was doing this trick as usual, but when he locked himself in the trunk, he had a heart attack and died. The trunk was set on fire, and the audience was left in terror as Smiley's body burned in front of them. Ever since then, Smiley's ghost would apparently haunt the theater, being sighted watching shows that were performed there, showing a special interest in magic shows. In the years since the park's closure, the occasional rumor of the magician being spotted has come up from the various urban explorers checking out the overgrown buildings. Would you ever be brave enough to explore Boblo Island Amusement Park? And if you did, would you be on the lookout for spectral magicians? Number 1. North Brother Island, New York. The North Brother Island is one of 2 small islands located in the East River of New York City. The island remained uninhabited until 1885, with the only trace of humanity being a small lighthouse that was erected in 1869. The island began seeing more use in 1885 when the Riverside Smallpox Hospital moved from Roosevelt Island to North Brother, when their mission expanded to treating and isolating victims of other quarantinable diseases such as typhoid, tuberculosis, and especially polio. In 1904, a steamship called the General Slocum was set ablaze, and over 1,000 people perished, either from the fire or from drowning while trying to escape, and ended up washing ashore on the island. One of the most famous residents at the hospital was Mary Mallon, otherwise known as Typhoid Mary, who was confined on the island for 20 years until her death in 1938, after having been declared a public health menace for infecting between 51 and 122 people while working as a cook. As public health measures like vaccines began to be adopted in the 30s and 40s, the need for a quarantine hospital lessened to the point where the hospital was closed. It was converted into housing for war veterans who were going to school in the city following World War II, before being converted into a rehabilitation facility for young people suffering from substance abuse issues. But it was closed in 1963 due to the cost of upkeep and the widespread corruption of the staff. In the years since, it was considered for a variety of purposes, including housing for the homeless and an extension of the jail at Rikers Island. But the danger of the unmarked manholes and the advanced dilapidation of the buildings, which are mostly collapsed and overrun by poison ivy, resulted in such ideas being abandoned. It was eventually decided that the site would serve as a bird sanctuary for herons and other wading shorebirds. Although many of the original 25 buildings are still standing in some shape or form, it has been made off limits to the public and is only available for supervised visits for those intending to go ashore for, quote, compelling academic and scientific purposes. With its history of confinement and death, perhaps it is best that this site has been deemed unfit for public visitation, although the history of the island is indeed compelling. What makes an enjoyable tourist destination for one will be very different for another.
Number 3. Epping Forest. Nothing quite like a good haunted forest, is there? Nice tall trees really provoke the imagination when it comes to campfire stories, and Epping Forest is quite the setting for all kinds of creepy spine chillers. The size and density of Epping Forest has made it an infamous spot for all kinds of criminals to conduct and plan their devious crimes. In the early 1700s, it was the hunting grounds of one particularly infamous highwayman, Richard Turpin, who would hid there and commit robberies. Now, since then,
More than a dozen bodies have been found, all in disgusting, horrifying conditions since the 1960s. So these spooky woods have become home to all manner of urban legend and hearsay about the crimes that have taken place here. It's developed a real rep for spooky, inexplicable noises and sights, including ghastly apparitions, with some claiming that the ghost of Turpin, the infamous bandit, still resides in the woods. Robbing other ghosts, I guess? God, imagine ghost on ghost crime. We need to do something about that. Ghostbusters, maybe. There's a legend that says that if you drive to Hangman's Hill and park your car in neutral, that your car will be slowly pulled uphill, drawn spiritually to a tree that once hung 3 witches on it, which was later cursed. But I gotta be honest, ignoring the witchy part, that actually sounds kind of fun. Just a little car getting towed uphill as part of a supernatural adventure, I'm on board with that. No doubt something that helps the forest have this scary reputation is its off-putting appearance. The trees have not been cut since the late 1800s, giving them an unusually overgrown, chaotic look. I can definitely relate to not having cut something since the 1800s. I think that's the last time I cut this mop of hair. Number 2, the Queen Mary. We've got a few good haunted woods, an old abandoned hospital, and I think for good measure we should toss in a haunted ship. Does this video not have any haunted houses? Wow, okay, hey, we're breaking new ground. There are few ships in the United States allegedly even half as haunted as the Queen Mary, a decommissioned ship that was converted into a hotel in Long Beach, California. It's stately, lush, and its lower decks are filled to bursting with restless spirits. The ship was christened in the mid-30s by Queen Mary herself, hence the name, and it was retired 3 decades later when it was then converted into a hotel, where guests can go and sleep in a stateroom and roleplay that they're crossing the Atlantic in style. But the continental breakfast is far from the only reason anyone goes to check it out, although I have heard it's amazing. Just make sure you get there early, those eggs go fast. There's a variety of hotspots that are said to be congregation points for spirits. The most famous is Stateroom B340, a problem before the place was even haunted, actually. In 1948, a passenger, Walter J. Adamson, passed away in the room under unknown conditions. Nothing came of it until 1966. A woman staying in the room reported she was woken up when the bed covers were pulled away and she saw a spectral man standing at the foot of her bed. She didn't assume this was the room service, so she screamed and rang for a steward, but as soon as somebody arrived, the man had vanished. Guests staying at the room claim they hear someone knocking at the door in the middle of the night. The Mary's maids complain that they find water running in B340 when no one's been in it in days. Wet bandits, that's a sign of the wet bandits for sure. People have reported all kinds of ghosts around the pool as well. Some notable ones include a woman in an old wedding gown next to a young boy in a suit, a cloud of steam appearing out of nowhere along with a girl in a blue and white dress who disappears and reappears in an instant. Oof. I'll stay on the land, I think, where all the land ghosts are. At least I know what those ones are. I trust them. And number 1, the Mal Dyer Rock. Do you believe in witches? For the residents of Leonardtown, Maryland, their town's history has been plagued by rumors and accusations surrounding one infamous resident, Mal Dyer, the Witch of Leonardtown. In the early 17th century, illness was ravaging this small community, taking a harsh toll on crops and wildlife, and the difficulty of the winter had crushed most residents' hopes of surviving the season. The town was deeply religious, and the harsh season led the townsfolk to believe a witch was to be blamed instead of just like polls and seasons and stuff, but they didn't really have a lot of books, so witches made a lot more sense. The church had determined that one resident in particular, Mal Dyer, an old widow who lived alone on the edge of town, was the witch who was tormenting the villagers. I get it, old crone on the edge of town, bad season, all the crops died. It definitely sounds like she was a witch. Well, it wasn't long before hurtful hearsay like that turned into a pitchfork-wielding mob who burned down Mal's small hut. Mal ran from the fire into the wilderness, but, being an old woman, collapsed shortly. She grabbed onto a boulder and raised her left hand to the moon and allegedly cursed at the village for what they had done to her. Her body was found frozen with her hand held upwards towards the sky. Since then, the boulder she was found on has been dubbed the Mal Dyer Rock, and is actually protected with plexiglass in an attempt to contain whatever curse that she unleashed onto the world. Many supernatural events are reported in the woods around this rock, ranging from shadow people, will-o-wisps, stories of spirits running through the road causing car accidents, thick unnatural fog, and lightning strikes around the rock are all common legends and elements of Mal Dyer's ancient curse on the town of Leonardsville. Now, some fun little trivia for some horror movie fans out there. The story of Maul Dyer served as one of the inspirations for the titular character in the cult classic horror flick Blair Witch Project, you know, about a spooky witch who got isolated in the woods. So if you're ever visiting Maryland and you want to see Maul Dyer's Rock, make sure to bring the video camera, shake it all up a bunch, because if you play your cards right, that's a 3-picture deal and a whole movie franchise.